All right, good morning. Hi, everybody. So this is quite exciting. I have something to share with you. It's Monday morning, and I want to talk to you and with you about the following. And the first time I ever heard this was in the yoga class, actually. And we will come back to meditation and the practice. But basically, this is 10 years ago. I was sitting in my yoga class with my favorite teacher. She was quite mature at that age. I think she was over 70, but regularly kicked our butt as a yoga instructor, and she had been doing this for years. And as part of one comment that she once gave in a class, we were sitting there and we're doing our yoga, and at some point she's like, this stuff is really like doing this yoga or doing these breathing techniques or doing these meditations. This isn't really about doing this on the mat, which, if you're doing this on the mat, it's not about, how spiritual do you feel yourself, or, how high can you get on the mat. It's really the challenges that what happens after you leave the mat in your daily life. And so she gave a good example, which I loved, which was, so if you're in a subway and it's crowded, this is New York City back in the day, imagine yourself, she said, imagine yourself, you're in a rush hour, like you're really tight, you're really uncomfortable, and someone shoves you, or you get pushed further into the car, and it's obviously already a very stressful situation, but something happens that really pushes your boundaries and maybe just pushes your buttons. And she said this whole meditation and this whole yoga business and all of that daily practice and blah blah blah, all it comes down to is, in that moment when you get pushed in a subway where you're already very uncomfortable, maybe that split second in which you can decide, am I going to escalate? Am I going to escalate the situation? Am I going to turn around and just like rant at this person and maybe risk a fight in the car because everyone is so tense, and then everyone gets involved because you're so packed? Like, in that split second that you get pushed, are you going to turn around and go into fight mode, or are you going to stay centered and stay with yourself and accept that you just got pushed, and then it's maybe some crazy packed subway in the morning? And she said all of the practice, everything that we're doing on the mat, is for that split second. And I had a split second moment yesterday, actually, so which was with my girlfriend. We're currently we have been in a relatively rough patch. We've been fighting a lot, and she's right and I'm right and we're both right and we both like each other, but sometimes it just so we disagree on some things, which is fine, as long as the culture of communication around it is good. And we had before we were really good in communicating when something hurt us, and or when something was off. And so lately we've both been sort of easily triggered by each other, by very small things. And when I say triggered, and this is the same as being shoved in a subway where you're maybe already uncomfortable or vulnerable, right? Yesterday we had a success. I have a success story where we really had a big fight on a few days before, and we're both feeling like this was heavy, and she felt heavy and I felt heavy, and but we managed to get together yesterday, which was amazing. I think I'm very proud that we got that done, because anyway, so it was really hot, but we met up. It was clear that we're not on the same page. We're not feeling each other. We're not like it was clear this was still a conflict situation. And we walked down a little path, and we found a little spot in a park under a tree, where it was where there was some shade, and we put out a blanket, and I had brought some water, and so we sat down, and we started talking about sort of, first of all, we were like, how are we going to approach this, right, without exploding again and having a whole drama. So so we decided, both of us, I think, very consciously to try to be as relaxed or as untriggered as possible, because we both knew where, you know, something's going to happen and there's this make or break moment, or this sort of pivot, like crossroads. We both knew that there would be a lot of crossroads for both of us in this conversation, where either we could choose to be triggered or to listen and try to understand. And so we talked, and there was towards the end, there was one moment where we're both pretty exhausted already, and it went pretty well. I would say, I think it went really well. And at the end, there was this one topic, you know, how you unearth through conversation and through communication, you're unearthing what this is really about. And so my girlfriend told me something that I hadn't known before, and there it was. There was my subway shove. I was super vulnerable. I was already super stressed. I was, you know, exhausted from 2 hours of really going through things with her. I hadn't eaten. I was in the proverbial morning New York City, how do you say, rush hour. This was emotional rush hour, and I was pretty beat. I hadn't basically slept before. And in that moment, it was clear that there was something I hadn't foreseen before, something that got me out of left field. And I'm very proud to say that in this very critical moment, in a very important part of my life, which is a key relationship with my girlfriend, my partner, I was able to not go into defense victimhood mode and lash back out at her, even though I was super, super, super exhausted, and even though she was super exhausted. And it could have gone like a lot of routes in that moment when she told me that. And it was that moment that this is all about. So I've told you about, you know, a meditation course and the breathing technique course. I can tell you now that this split second where you either gonna flip the fuck out, right? Or you're gonna say, okay, I'm about to flip out, but I'm going to consider what's happening around me. I'm gonna not feel like a victim here, and I'm gonna be accountable. I'm gonna accept it. And so amazing. And so I felt, once I didn't flip yesterday in that moment, and I was actually I asked her a few more questions where I was like, okay, I obviously don't have the full picture. I just got a piece of information, like a piece to the puzzle. And instead of flipping out about that this piece of puzzle exists, which is totally what I would otherwise maybe do, I started asking questions. And at the end of that conversation, which was at the last leg of when we sat in the park, that's when I started to deeply understand where she was coming from. And it was that much of a pivotal piece to her puzzle, of her personality, of her being, that I felt like after this conversation, I felt like I had understood her better. I also said, I had to say, hey, listen, I'm not sure how I feel about it. And so it's not that I can't tell you what it is. This is obviously private, but it was something that is, you know, I will have to think about for quite a bit. And I want to think about it for a little bit. But I think it was I felt so much more connected, which is what this whole thing was about. I wanted to, I think we both wanted to stay connected, even though we're in a rough spot. And I'm so proud of her, and that she was patient with me over time, and I think I was patient with her as well. And I'm proud that we actually both, in that moment when shit hit the fan, that neither of us just said something, you know, like a cruise missile, like that one comment where I protect myself. You know, I didn't snipe in that moment where it became, you know, where the stakes were really high, and the stress was really high as well. And so I wanted to show you, so awesome, right? This is amazing. I wanted to show you a model around that I've been trying to sort of live more. which is all about this, that one moment where you want to do the right thing. And it's in, the book, The One Thing. I've mentioned that before. It's a great book. It's quite a productivity book, but it's actually, and I didn't go into that in the other video when I talked about it. It actually is much more than just this one thing. And the chapter that I keep on coming back to is the following. And you see this graph here on the side. It's basically the authors basically suggest, how do you deal with things that happen in life? And there's basically two directions that you can take, and these are the crossroads I mentioned. You either happen to become the victim, or you become something that he calls accountable. And for me, so yesterday life happened, and so in this conversation and in this very crucial moment of learning something really important, I had the choice. Am I going down this route, or will I go up to this route? And luckily, and for also having a meditation practice and having just a mental practice developed over years, I was able to consciously guide myself in that moment when life happened to go up this ladder. And he adds a few more questions, like what's the step to being accountable is to seek reality as the first thing. Ask yourself, what's happening here? Then the next one, acknowledge reality. This is the way it is. Then own it. To say, okay, I'm part of this. I'm here right now, so I can't just pretend this isn't. I can't. I'm not part of this. Then the next one, find a solution. What can I do? This is where the one thing. What's the one thing I can do that will make it easier? And then actually do it, as opposed to going. And I'm not gonna even go into the victim role model, but this meditation helps you make that decision right here. Are you going to go up the ladder, or are you going to go down the ladder? And honestly, I have been in some parts of my life, I'm super accountable, and I'm always embracing the challenge and life changes, and yeah. But in a lot of places in my life, and definitely relationships, and definitely in that very vulnerable and deep relationship, I found myself to go down the victim path so many times now, and it's not working, and it hasn't worked. And I'm glad that this is changing through I guess daily practice also, but also just a reflection. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. 13 minutes, I think that's more than enough. So accountability, victimhood, wanting to do the right thing, and using meditation to get there. And I think, again, this is why I think why I've put together this course, which I'm launching today, which I'm very excited about. I finished it, and this is also what's the simplest and the hardest at the same time. So I hope you find a moment today, or in the next few days, where you consciously stop time in a moment of decision, or in a moment where you would react normally in the one way, and ask yourself, will this trigger a riot in the subway? So maybe I'll reframe this, think about, if this was the pressure cooker of the New York rush hour subway, would my reaction fuse the situation or defuse the situation, and go from there. So thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.